Every Halloween, I have a story to tell. Written by sleepyhallow_101 from the Reddit No Sleep subreddit. I liked Ben. I really did. I mean, he was a nice guy. We had some fun times together in college, messing around the dorm, going to parties, all the dumb shit college guys do. He was cool and all, but he was a little pretentious. Well, I guess the word he used was artistic. He thought he was real smart, spent a lot of time trying to prove it to everyone. He had his own blog developed to film critiques. Not the big ones, though. Just little indie productions because nothing else was worth his time. When he got like that, he could be pretty insufferable. Perhaps the most annoying thing he did was performance art. Now, I don't want to be the guy who says all performance art is dumb, but yeah, no, all performance art is dumb. Oh look, you're on display painting a picture of Jesus from your own urine, how original and edgy. Maybe I'm a little jaded, but it always seemed to be so contrived to me. Unfortunately, Ben really loved it. He thought there was something beautiful in art that was physically living and devoted an embarrassing amount of time to it. Anyway, I hung out with Ben a few times after college, but we mostly just met up to do some heavy drinking and maybe hit up a strip club or two. He considered that performance art as well, which was just fine with me. It gave me an excuse to waste some $1 bills. Since we didn't hang out very often, I had a bad feeling when he contacted me about a month before last Halloween. He called me up about 7 in the morning on Saturday, which is too early to even consider waking up, in my opinion. I answered in a daze and he started running his mouth like crazy, as though afraid that if he didn't get it all out at once, he never would.
Mike, hey, Mikey, listen, buddy, I need your help, okay? Okay. I've got this idea for a performance art and, well, it's going to be killer, you know? So good, it's going down on Halloween, can you come and help? Look, I'll even pay you, man, $50, so how about it?
Now, I've never cared much about Halloween one way or the other, and I'm a pretty easy guy. $50 to probably just sit there and run a fog machine or some bullshit? Sign me up. For the right price, I can even pretend that I wanted to be there. Besides, what else are friends for? A few days later, he gave me the details. To be honest, I was a little shocked when he sent the email. I know that performance art is tended to be edgy and can sometimes get a little dangerous, but this seemed downright negligent. Mike, thanks for agreeing to do this for me. I've talked to a few other people, but they weren't really comfortable with it for reasons you'll probably be able to figure out. Of course, I understand if you want to back out, but I think you are probably the most relatable person I know. It's really not that big of a deal. I'm sure you'll agree. As I'm sure you've noticed, quote-unquote vampires have become very prominent in the media as of late. I say vampires, quote-unquote, because they are beginning to deviate so widely from the traditional myths that they resemble forest fairies more than anything else. Altruistic, sparkly, whiny? Give me a break. We need more Dracula. We need more Camilla. We need more death, destruction, and blood. My performance will center on the theme of rebirthing the vampire. For the vampire to be reborn, he must first be buried. To turn people's attentions back to the myths of old, I'm going to do just that. I will be burying the vampire. I have a group of viewers signed up already to participate in the performance, so you don't need to worry about that. I'm going to plan a series of vampire-themed clues around town for them to follow. The clues should be pretty simple, and will probably take no more than an hour to an hour and a half for them to find me. Here comes the somewhat controversial part. Essentially, for this performance to have any semblance of meaning, I need to be buried alive. Don't worry, it's perfectly safe. I have a buddy from back home who's building me a coffin with a hole in the top. I'll be fixing it with a pipe that will be stuck an inch or two above the ground. That way, I won't run out of air. I'll also have a few necessities in the coffin in case something happens. Food, water, and a flashlight. Once they arrive at my grave, which will be completely vampirized, they'll be provided with an array of shovels and will bring me back to life. A reincarnation of the true mythological history of vampires. Here's where you come in. I need you to bury me. In addition, I need you to be my safety net. If they can't find me, if something goes wrong, if I become sick, I need you to be the one to get me out or call the police, if necessary. I'll also need you to decorate my grave. Make it really creepy. Don't worry, I'll send you some blueprints. I know this is a little stressful, and it may take some time for you to decide, but rest assured, this is a completely safe project. There's no danger of suffocation, and the coffin is sturdy, so it's very unlikely it will collapse. I really just need you there for support and actual hard work of burying me. What do you say? I'd even be willing to up your pay to $100 if that's what you need. Let me know. Rest in peace, Ben. I stared at my screen for a few minutes, completely dumbfounded. Once I cut through all the bullshit about art and vampires and rebirth, what it came down to was death. This guy actually wanted me to almost kill him. I mean, sure, it probably was safe, but my mind went over the plan slowly. What if I couldn't get him out in time? One shovel in a pit of dirt wouldn't be a fast job. Furthermore, what if something happened to me? Before making a decision, I sent him another email asking if he was really sure he was up for this. Of course he knew, he said. And then he said something that would always stick with me. Art must be a little dangerous, my friend, for it to be real. A month later, I found myself standing at the foot of a grave. It was 6 feet deep and perfectly rectangular. Sitting at the bottom was a tapered coffin covered with black lacquer, a white skull painted on the top. In the eye of the skull was a hole big enough for the PVC pipe. Stenciled underneath was a line from Dracula. Den Toten reiten schnell. For the dead travel fast. I stood there like an idiot, waiting for Ben to show up. In the end, I decided to go along with this stupid gig. Ben was a stubborn bastard, and even if I didn't help him, someone else would. At least, that's the justification I gave myself. But the real reason was that, deep inside my heart, his words were still echoing. Art must be a little dangerous for it to be real. I'd ended up doing a little bit more work than I had intended. For one, I had to place his stupid clues around the city. It wasn't hard work, but it took some time to get them all in the proper places. Luckily for Ben, they were pretty obvious clues. There was no need to worry that his participants would be unable to find him. Ben had set up the grave and the coffin a few days prior to Halloween. It was out in the woods just on the outskirts of town, no chance of it being disturbed. I tried to talk him out of burying it the whole 6 feet down. If something happens I need to get you out fast, what will I do? Can't you put it closer to the surface? Ben had just shaken his head in exasperation. You just don't get it, do you? It has to be done right. Remember what I told you. Art must be a little dangerous for it to be real. So I shrugged and let him mess around with whatever dumbassery would get him off. I was just beginning to wonder if I should have brought more beer. This promised to be a long night, when Ben showed up. I had to restrain my laughter when I saw his getup. A cheap Dracula costume from Walmart had never looked so pathetic, especially when topped off with those cheap plastic fangs. He greased his hair back and painted on a widow's peak. I couldn't resist. Wow, seriously, dude? He gave me a stern look. It's a comment on the commercialization of vampires and horror as we know it today. He fished around in his pocket and pulled out a walkie-talkie. Here, take one. Range isn't very far, but my cell phone won't work that far underground. You'll have to stay nearby. Let me know if you're going out of range. I shrugged and took it. Okay, but you brought your cell just in case, right? Nah, what good will it do if it doesn't work? This guy's batshit insane, I thought. But he handed me the $100 and, suddenly, it didn't seem to matter anymore. I helped him into the coffin and shut the lid. He seemed pretty calm. If it were me, I knew I'd be having a panic attack. I fit the PVC pipe into the hole. It slid in perfectly snug. I climbed out of the coffin and grabbed my shovel, taking one last look at the shiny black peeking out from the dirt. With a resigned shrug, I started to shovel in the dirt. Okay, well, he asked for this. It took almost a full hour to get all the dirt piled in. The PVC pipe was barely visible over the grave. I piled the earth around it to hide it as well as I could. Then I set up the rest of the grave. A hideously gothic headstone made of styrofoam and cheap Walmart flowers. Once it was finally finished, I sat back against a tree and waited. There was an awful lot of waiting to be done. 3 hours later, his participants still hadn't come. He'd buzzed in on the walkie-talkie a few times, asking if they'd shown up. I continually answered in the negative, wondering how long he'd be willing to keep up this charade. He must be getting worried, I thought, staring at my watch. It was already 10 p.m. and not a soul to be seen.
Hey, Mike, something must have happened. I don't think you're coming. Can you get me out of here?
Ben's voice cracked and faded in and out of the static fuzz. I took another swig of my beer and heaved a sigh. Of course they weren't coming. They were frantically searching for the last clue. My hand crept into my pocket as I felt it folded there, the creases poking at the soft flesh of my palm.
Mike, are you there? Did you go out of range?
I turned the walkie-talkie off. I didn't need it anymore anyway. Carefully, I picked up a handful of disturbed earth from the top of the makeshift grave. I poured it down the pipe and listened. I heard the muffled exclamation, the series of expletives. I thought I could hear a thumping sound. He must be hitting the top of the coffin. I smiled a little to myself as I poured some more dirt in through the pipe. Ben's struggles got louder and I felt a certain heat rising up in me. Oh, I knew it could be good, but I didn't know it could be this good. This was incredible. This was perfect. This was godly. Eventually, I grew bored of shoving the earth down into the coffin. I could hear Ben screaming and sobbing reverberating up the pipe. I yanked a handkerchief out of my back pocket and stuffed it inside. I made sure to plug it up good and tight. It would only be a matter of time now, assuming he could regulate his breathing. He could possibly have a few hours, but I knew he was panicking, and that would simply serve to shorten his time. The pounding grew weaker as I finished my beer. Once I was certain there was no saving him, I went to finish my work. Ben was right. Everything really did go off without a hitch. I don't know what I was so worried about. I'd gone to find his lost sheep, the wayward participants who were scrambling in frustration for the last clue. I scolded them for making us wait so long, acted the part of the reluctant friend indulging his lunatic companion. I took them out to the grave. It was now past midnight. They sat hushed as I gave the stupid speech that Ben had prepared for me. Everything seemed normal. I'd make sure to stow the rag before anyone could see it. Friends, foes, and everyone in between. Tonight we gather to resurrect the ancient horror that has plagued mankind for centuries. Its tale, once a gruesome epic of blood and seduction, has become nothing more than commercialized fodder as society has aged. Now, the time has come for the phoenix to burn and rise again. So too shall the blood-soaked visage of the vampire. My voice resonated throughout the woods, and the morons in attendance clapped as they all reached for their shovels. We dug him up in about half an hour. It was much faster work with his host of suckers. It was good that we reached the coffin quickly, because I could barely contain my excitement. 2 of the men opened the coffin and screamed. The woman leaned in over the grave to peek as well, full of expectancy. There was something dreadful about the scene, to be sure. Ben's face had gone gray, sprayed over with a few specks of dirt. His hands were bloody, his fingernails pried off. Deep scratches decorated the top of the lid. The men who had opened his tomb dragged him out in a panic, unsure if this was part of the performance or not. A few moments of silent listening as chest produced no heartbeat. The proclamation was definite. He was dead. They screamed. They called the police. They alternatively looked at his body and shielded themselves from its horror, enraptured yet struggling. They ignored me, but that was fine. It was fine because they were admiring my work, the work of the real artist. Finally, I had been given the opportunity to prove my worth. Finally, I had found my sacrificial lamb. It had been a rousing success. The heart raging in my body affirmed that much. I didn't even care if I was caught, so long as I could have this moment to hold for the rest of my life. Ben was right. I should have known. A man of principle never lies, and I owe him a debt of gratitude for realizing the artist within me. Art must be a little dangerous for it to be real.